Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going to be talking about all of the things I would like to see in the future of the finals, whether it comes in Season 5 or beyond. So, you know, if I say something here that I'd like to see in Season 5, then obviously that would be great. But if it doesn't happen in Season 5, it is still stuff that I would like to see implemented in Season 6 or Season 7 or even further on than that. So I'm going to be talking about how I would like the balancing to go in an ideal world, what weapons, a few specific weapons I would like to see buffed or nerfed. Then I'm also going to be talking about like new stuff, like new content, new weapons, new gadgets, and new features that I would like to see with newer seasons. So the first thing I want to talk about is visual recoil. For anyone that watches my channel a lot, you would know that I really don't like visual recoil that much, and that's because it just doesn't make so much sense. I don't think it makes sense for a game where all of the bullets always go towards the center of your screen to not have the center of your screen aligned with your reticle, which just makes guns inaccurate innately. I'm not a huge fan of that, so I don't think this is going to happen. But it would be really great if the visual recoil was just dialed back a little bit for all of the weapons. And if it happened for all of the weapons, then it would, like, the buff would cancel each other out. And, you know, you wouldn't have to rebalance everything. If nothing had visual recoil, it's the same as everything having visual recoil, right? So it wouldn't really mess with the balancing that much. However, probably would take a lot of time and effort, so I'm not expecting that to happen anytime soon. And we know that Embark doesn't super love buffing stuff that much. More on that later. So that's most likely not going to happen. However, a compromise here is to just add an option in-game, and this is what I would like to see. An option in-game in the settings menu to have a crosshair on that never disappears, even when you ADS, and always just stays in the center of your screen. So it doesn't move at all, and you can put it like on and have it on over your reticle, like over your AKM reticle or your pike reticle, or something like that. That would be absolutely fantastic. And what this would do is it would make everyone happy, because if you didn't want to have that on, that's fine. You don't have to use it because it's like an optional settings, you know, menu thing. And if you did want to use it, then you could use it, and it would basically eliminate all of the problems that visual recoil brings, because you would actually know where you're shooting. The visual recoil would still be there, but you would know where the center of your screen is, so you wouldn't have to look at the reticle. You would just know where it is because of the crosshair overlay, let's say. And this would also mean that people didn't have to cheat to have good aim. So right now, using a crosshair overlay, a third-party crosshair overlay, goes against the finals terms of service, and it therefore is cheating. It's a bannable offense. So this would also avoid that problem. There are multiple content creators and streamers that do not have a center dot crosshair on, so they're using like a monitor crosshair overlay or like a third-party crosshair overlay or like a piece of blue tack in the center of their screen or something like that. And that's not great, because you have a lot of people that are making content for the game and like the game very much that are, you know, kind of cheating in a very loose form. But to be fair, you know, the whole not having a dot that stays in the center and the whole visual recoil is a little bit silly to be in a first-person shooter. So it would just be really, really nice to have a center dot that never moves. It always stays in the center of your screen, even if you're jumping or sliding or ziplining or something like that. And it's just always there, and it's in the options menu, and it would just help to make the gunplay feel so much better. And I know how all of the guns felt without visual recoil, because I was there in the betas when that was happening. The guns never used to have nearly as much visual recoil as they have now. Like, they had like 1% of what they have now. And the gunplay felt so much better, because you could actually tell where you were shooting, which I think is a very good thing to be in a FPS game. So this little crosshair overlay wouldn't take a whole lot of effort. It would mean that people wouldn't have to cheat to have a crosshair overlay, which a lot of people just like having on anyway, because it's consistent and it's probably more customizable. So they wouldn't have to cheat to have a center dot, and also it would just make the gunplay feel better. You don't have to guess where your bullets are going to be going when you're shooting with something like the AKM. You don't have to hope you hit your first shot and then watch where the hit markers appear so you can guess where the center of your screen is. From that, you're always going to have a center dot. and it's there if you want it. It's you know, if you don't want it, then you don't have to use it, and it would just make everyone happy, and it would just be a very, 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 very nice quality of life feature that I think would make a huge impact to the gunplay. So that's the first thing I'd really like to see. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. We already have multiple different, you know, center dot options in the settings menu. I don't feel like it would be too complicated to implement this, and I feel like it would just make everything feel so much better to use. So that's the first thing. Next thing is I would very much like it if the developers started buffing stuff a little bit more instead of just continuously nerfing things. Now, I know someone in the comments is going to be tippy-tapping away at the keyboard saying, but hey, Swamp Bump, you know, like, things were buffed more than they were nerfed since Season 3. There have been more buffs than nerfs. That might be the case. There may have been more buffs than nerfs, but the nerfs are so much weightier than the buffs. And you can't argue against that, because recently, in the latest patch, the Model 1887, which was the one weapon that hadn't changed since the betas, was nerfed. And this means that everything since the betas, the SA-1216, the Flamethrower, the AKM, the SDI, the Lewis gun, the M60, everything since the betas, all just got worse. It got worse and worse and worse and worse because it was just nerf after nerf after nerf after nerf. And the Model 1887, which is the one weapon that hadn't been changed, eventually had to be nerfed as well. And this is called power creep. I mean, power leak, rather, my bad. It's power leak. It's where everything just slowly and progressively gets worse. And that's what's happening. That's what's been happening since the open betas. Whenever I talk about buffing stuff, people are always like, oh no, you can't buff stuff because you'll have power creep. But we've had power leak, which is the opposite, since the game's launch. Since before the game's launch, even, because it was the betas. So I would very much like to see some buffs, and the reason for that is because a lot of the guns just feel really bad to use. Like the M60, which has one of the easiest recoil patterns in the game, still feels absolutely awful to use. Part of that is because of the visual recoil, and the other part is because the bullets just don't do any damage. You have to hit someone a whole lot of times to be able to kill them with the M60 or even the Lewis gun, and they don't feel very good to use. And then something like the 93R also is just not a fantastic weapon. The V9S is also just not a fantastic weapon. There are lots of guns that just don't feel very good to use, whereas in the betas they used to. Like the V9S in the betas felt very, 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 very good to use. And what happened back in the betas, I think Embark has kind of stopped doing this now, but I want to talk about this a little bit as well. Back in the betas, Embark was very hasty to listen to what the community has to say. The best example I can think of this is in the betas, the SA-1216 was the meta pick by far. You could argue the SAR is maybe a close second paired with the recon sensors, but the SA-1216, you could just 3v1 teams with that, and that stayed until Season 2, and it was by far the best weapon in the betas, as far as I'm aware. But the community picked on the Flamethrower. It had a small blinding effect, and it did lots of damage, and it did lots of afterburn, but it still wasn't better than the SA-1216. But, you know, Reddit and Discord thought it was. They complained about it a lot on Reddit and Discord, and then the devs were like, hey, people don't like the Flamethrower, they think it's too overpowered, I guess we should nerf it. And then the Flamethrower was nerfed, and then it took 2 additional seasons to nerf the SA-1216, which was just the more powerful weapon. So that's an example of the devs listening to the community ages ago. An example of them listening to the community recently was the sword. The sword, I think it was in the half-season patch, like the same patch the model got nerfed, recently got a nerf to its range, and this just didn't need to happen. The sword is something you pick if you're in like a gold lobby and you can't aim very well, but you've got okay movement, and you pray that the enemies also don't have good aim. So neither of you have good aim, that's why you're using the sword, but if they're using a gun and they can't hit you with the gun because you can move very quickly because you're light, then maybe you're going to win that fight. I've had plays where I've just 3v1 people with the sword, but it's always because the other person doesn't have good aim. If you're a really, really good player and you're playing light, for some reason, you're going to be using the SH1900 or the M11 because you're going to be able to kill people much more consistently with those weapons. The sword at the higher levels is just like someone is so good that they could use it and get away with it. Even if the other people have pretty good aim, they probably have like very, very, very good movement, very good gateway plays, very good sonar grenade plays and invisibility plays and stuff like that. But if you're in gold The sword is only good because the other people can't aim, and even if you're in Ruby, like, the sword is not the best thing to use. Light isn't a good class to use there. So I quickly want to finish up on this, and then I'll talk about that more. So I'd like to see the devs not so hastily nerfing stuff just because the community complains about it. That's something that's been happening for a very long time, and sometimes the community is right. That's very true. Sometimes they're right. Like, they were right with the recon sensors. Those were overpowered. They were right with the nukes. Those were pretty annoying. So sometimes the community gets it right, but a lot of the time they just get it completely wrong as well. Like with the sword nerf, it didn't need to be nerfed. Light is not a good class. Its weapons do not need nerfing. So that was a little bit surprising. And I feel like that was a little bit of a hasty decision. The model nerf was great. The model nerf made a whole lot of sense. That was very, very, very good. Obviously, I would have liked to see other stuff getting buffed instead of, you know, another thing being nerfed. But it was a good nerf. It didn't, you know, break the weapon. And it was needed. So that makes sense. The sword nerf was not needed. The light is not a good pick. It's just not a good class. And so now what I want to talk about is light needs a buff. So a buff to the light is something I would like to see in the future seasons of the finals, hopefully in season 5. The reason for this is because medium right now is the meta. I don't want healing beam to get nerfed into the ground. I don't want defibrillator to get reworked or nerf into the ground. I don't want that to happen. I think both of those are in a good spot right now. Medium's a very good class right now, and heavy is also a very decent class. It's not the meta, but it's a close second, right? It's a pretty decent class. You do have the occasional moments where you just 3v1 people because you RPG them and then you hit them with a nice charge and slam. That's a team wipe for you, right? You do have those moments as a heavy. They're a powerful class with the dome and the barricades and the RPG and the charge and the winch claw even. They've got a lot of good options on them, right? So you could run both of those in ranked and have a very good time at any level. If you're light, you're going to have like 2 specific places where you're going to be able to play well as light, and everywhere else you're just not going to do that well. The first place you're going to do okay as light in ranked is like bronze to gold. Bronze to gold, other people aren't going to be able to aim very well, and you're going to be able to get a lot of kills as a light. That's the first place it's going to do well. And maybe if you play medium, you know, you don't have the best aim, so maybe you can do more as a light than as a medium in those ranges. That's fine. When you start getting to plat, to about diamond or maybe low ruby, the light isn't going to be a good pick because other people can aim and your teammates are going to be pretty decent at those levels. So it's going to be very valuable to just pop a defib, get the teammate back alive, turn the fight back into a 3v3 instead of trying to 2v3 people as a light. That's not going to go very well. And the second place that the sword works well is when you're like the #1 Ruby player in the world and you're really, really good. So you can do whatever you want and you're playing light because it's fun. But if you played medium or heavy, you'd be able to do much, much, much more in the fight because they're much better classes that just have more available to them. So the light's going to do well at the low ranges where no one can aim, or at the high ranges where someone just has like really, 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 really good movement. They've got like a very good team to back them up if things go wrong, so they can basically just do whatever they want. Those are the 2 ranges in which light would function well. Everywhere else, it's not going to be fantastic. So I would like to see a very small buff to them to make them more viable in ranked rather than just at those 2 ranges, rather than just having to hope that your enemies aren't good, or rather than being the #1 player in the world. I would like to see the light become a little bit more viable, and I just want a small buff here, a small but impactful buff, such as what the light actually received before is the faster health regen than the medium and the heavy. This was like a very good, very like interesting buff that worked very well. I think it's a little bit annoying to have to wait such a long time as a heavy to regenerate health, but it works well and it feels good to play light, and that's a nice little bonus. So another little thing like that I think would be very good and just help to make the light a little bit more viable in ranked. I'm not asking, you know, to like buff every weapon or anything like that. Just a small but impactful thing to try and nudge the light a little bit more towards the meta, I think would be very good and very nice to see, because there hasn't been a point since the game's launch where the light was the meta pick. Like, you could argue in Season 3 with Terminal Attack, light was good, but Season 3, I don't think many people played ranked in Season 3 because it wasn't a great game mode. But even in World Tour in Season 3, which was, the regular, like, cash-out mode, light still wasn't very good. So I'd like to see something done there. Now I've talked enough about that. So, now for, like, new stuff, new features, new content I would like to see. I'd like to see a map voter, or like a map selector. So I want to be able to pick which maps that I want to queue for, so I don't have to play on Kyoto for 40 minutes in a ranked game and then lose all my rating because I don't like the map. And if you're someone that likes Seoul, but maybe you don't like Monaco, or if you're someone that doesn't like Vegas or something like that, then I just want to be able to queue for all of the maps that I want to play, and then leave one out, and then I don't get that map. Maybe I have to wait like a minute or two longer in the queue, but I would genuinely rather do that than have to play on Kyoto, because, lots of people also have performance issues on Kyoto, so that's why I'm kind of specifying that one, and also I personally just don't like the map. So, map selector would be very, very, very good. And by default, you could just have it so that all maps are enabled, so people don't have to mess around with it to get the fast matchmaking times. But if you go into the settings and you can turn off certain maps, that would be fantastic. And maybe to keep the matchmaking fast, you could make it so that you have to have like 2 enabled or something like that. I don't know. Just a map selector for what you want to queue into, I think would be a very, very, very good idea. At least for ranked, I don't really care about the other game modes because, it's not ranked or whatever. But at least for ranked, I really do feel quite disheartened when I'm about to play a 40-minute game and I get Kyoto. That just doesn't feel great to me. And also, for people that do have performance issues, they can just avoid that map entirely then, and then they won't have the performance issues, which is obviously good as well. So, very much like to see that. Small little UI thing I'd like to see is, instead of having to add someone as a friend to invite them to a game, I'd very much like to just be able to invite them without having to add them. I think that would be very nice to see as well. As for new content, I'd like a shotgun for the medium. So the lightest 2 shotguns, the SH1900 and the M26 matter. The heaviest 2 shotguns, the SH1216 and the KS23. The light only has 1 shotgun, which is the model 1887. So I'd like to see something added there. A second shotgun for the medium. Maybe like a full auto shotgun, because we don't have one of those yet. We've got the SH1216, but you have to pump that. So maybe like a full auto shotgun that does small amounts of damage, but has a really fast fire rate, and you don't have to like pump it or anything like you do with SH1216. Something like that would be cool. Something we don't have yet, and it would also give the medium 2 shotguns, which I think would be quite cool. I know a lot of people have been saying they want to see shockwave grenades in the game, and I think that would be cool as well. I think I probably mentioned shockwave grenades in like Season 2 of the finals, so I'm sure the devs have probably caught wind of that. I would be a little bit surprised if shockwave grenades weren't introduced at some point. I don't know if it's going to be this season, but I reckon they're on their way anyway. So shockwave grenades is definitely something I'd like to see. Probably for the heavy, probably a grenade that you throw, and then if someone's in range of it, it makes them go very far away. It's probably something you can use as a movement buff for yourself as well. So is that everything? No, I also wanted to see the MGL32 rework. So the MGL32 rework, I'd like to see its secondary attack do something. So the devs already stated they wanted to rework the MGL32, and a small thing that you could do to this to make it more viable is make it so that if you right click, it blows up. So right now the right click just right now the right click just zooms in, so it doesn't really do anything. You don't really need to be using the zoom for the MGL32 because like it doesn't really do anything. So if you right clicked, I think it would make a lot of sense for whatever grenade you just shot to blow up. So if someone's like close to you, you can right click and then left click and then right click straight away to try and get like the maximum damage on them, instead of having to wait for it to bounce a couple of times first. I think that would make a lot of sense. And also, excuse me. And also, just in general, I'd very much like to see, I'd like to see the developers to lean into the whole virtual reality idea. So, like, we have Goo, which is like a wacky thing that works very well. We've got, like, the sledgehammer and the spear, and both of those are a little bit wacky, but they both work very well. The riot shield too. And then, all of the weapons are based on real weapons. Like the FAMAS is the FAMAS, the AKM is the AKM, like in real life, right? So they're all based on on pretty real stuff. But then we also have stuff like goo. So the devs definitely are leading into the virtual reality idea a little bit already in terms of gadgets and weapons. But I'd very much like to see if they just like leaned into it more, and just brought out like a sci-fi like Overwatch 2 style weapon that was really wacky and was like really unique. And this would also actually really help the long-term health of the game as well, because right now for the light, there are lots of weapons that do the same thing. We have the XP54, the V9S, the 93R, the M11, the SH1900, the sword, the M26 Matter, and then also like the throwing knives and the bow. And all of those weapons are operating at a pretty similar range for the most part. And that's like 6 different weapons that are going to be like getting used in the same range. And then if you dig a little further, like the M11, the XP54, the V9S, and the 93R, those are all like very, very similar weapons that all have a very similar range. So you've got 4 weapons in one class, all competing with each other there. And if you started adding stuff like really sci-fi, like Zaraya's laser beam, like if you added a laser beam type weapon that you had to keep on the opponent all times to do damage over time or something like that, if you added that into the finals, it wouldn't be like anything else. So it would be its own unique thing, and that would mean you wouldn't have so many overlapping weapons and stuff like that. So that's something I'd very much like to see as well. I think that's it. I think I've talked about everything that I would like to see. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head if there's anything else I wanted to mention. I don't think there is. I will say, if you have any ideas, just tell me those down in the comments down below, and then I might make another video going through what all of y'all said, because I always find that kind of interesting. Also, my Discord has been up on my channel for a very long time, and I've been linking it in like every video for a very long time. But after the first week I put it up, it expired, and I didn't realize it expired. And then some commenter told me that it expired. Shout out to you if you're watching this. So now you can join my Discord again, because now it's properly set up. The link isn't going to expire. It's like a permanent link, so it's not going to expire anymore. And check out my Twitch as well, if you want to see me live stream. I have some plans to do some like viewer games and stuff and see how all of that goes. If I don't crash, I seem to crash a lot when I'm streaming, but oh well. So yeah, there you go. I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.